doing great. How are you?
How is it that the director of the FBI, whether you like him or don't like him, can tell us in plain English that there are increased and elevated threats from Hamas and Hezbollah inside the United States, coming from the southern border, and the DHS, the secretary, the president don't do anything about it?
Well, they're working on a modus operandi to fundamentally change the country. I mean, they hate our country the way it is, and they want to change it. And so they're doing that by using mass migration as a means to do it. And what they really want is to empower themselves forever. They, I think incorrectly, but they believe that these individuals will come here and have children that will be American citizens that will vote Democrat. I can't see any other reason why they would justifiably allow Americans to die to fentanyl overdose, allow children to be human trafficked. I mean, none of it makes any sense. You know, it's just not reasonable. It's not logical. But that's the best guess.
I find it fascinating because they kept telling us that the number one threat, national security threat, was domestic white supremacist terrorism, which they then tried to link to Republicans. Okay,
yeah.
which is grotesque. Okay,
it's ridiculous. Yeah.
But we have the FBI director in his own words. Now, when they said that led them to, to have a series of maneuvers they were making to try to thwart this, supposed specter of domestic white supremacist terrorism. I mean, we know that they kind of entrapped people in the plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan. But, we're not talking about domestic law enforcement anymore. We're talking about the kind of people that bake babies and gang rape women and behead elderly people. We're not talking about people who are committing simple crimes. We're talking about actual terrorists who we're being told are coming across the southern border. You'd think the president would act on that.
Well, you certainly would, and you look at the policies of this secretary, which became very clear in today's hearing, that they are not requiring the detention even of people who are on the terrorist watch list. So someone who comes to Border Patrol is encountered, is listed as a member of the terrorist watch list. They do an assessment, he said, and then in some cases just release them into the United States. That is insane. These are individuals known on the terrorist watch list, and they don't have an automatic policy of detention. And the FBI director today, in testimony, admitted that they're looking for some of these people right now. What this secretary is doing at our southern border is putting every single American at risk, from the little baby crawling around on the VRBO who encounters fentanyl left by the previous renter and dies, to a potential terrorist attack. And it is unconscionable. It is unacceptable, and we intend to complete our investigation very shortly into this and make a recommendation to the floor of the House. And hopefully the 8 Republicans who voted not to impeach Mr. Mayorkas last time will change their mind with the data that we put together.
Is it true that Palestinians crossing the border or Middle Easterners in some cases are being categorized as others?
So there was a story on that from some time ago, like I think last year, and that story got recirculated. That, as I understand it, is not happening.
Okay, all right, because I read that story too, and we were just
we
okay,
looked into it.
It's
insane.
Yeah, it is, and we see a wave of anti-Semitism that is growing in this country. And it's funny, I just said this to your colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene. The Democrats like to say things like, well, not all Republicans are racist, but all racists are Republicans. Okay, well, not all Democrats are calling for the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people, but all the people that are calling for the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people are Democrats. I don't see any MAGA hats amongst these Palestinian flags. They invited in something that now they can't control, and this is driving this narrative that anyone that votes for Trump is a Nazi.
Yes, that's exactly right. But I can assure you the guys that are pulling down American flags, yelling "Death to Israel" and "From the river to the sea," and all this mess about Palestine are not Republicans. The ones who stormed into the Cannon House office building the other day, broke the law, and were protesting on behalf of Palestine, they're not Republicans.
But January 6th. But January 6th, sir. It's funny. Yesterday there was a rally to support Israel. There was no American flags being burned. There was no spray painting of memorials. There was no fighting with police officers. It actually seemed pretty peaceful.
It was. There was a little bit of trash, I will note, on the ground when I drove through last night. But other than that was it.
It's just fascinating, and it's fascinating to watch the media try to give this counterweight. We have people in this country that are outwardly calling for the destruction of the Jewish people. And the media keeps saying racist Republicans, anti-Semitic Republicans. President Trump's daughter is an Orthodox Jew raising his grandchildren Orthodox Jewish. He's the one behind the Abraham Accords. He's the one that moved the embassy to Jerusalem. I don't know. Walking like a duck, talking like a duck doesn't look like that doesn't look like an anti-Semite to me.
Yeah, no. Like I said, every single one of these people who are protesting in the streets of America right now and at these college campuses about pro-Palestine and all that, they're Democrats. There are no Republicans in that group, I can assure you.
Is there anything else coming out of the House Homeland Security Committee that we need to know about that we might not be seeing in the media?
I'm not paying attention right now to the coverage on the committee hearing, but the 2 million known gotaways and unknown gotaways, they're clearly a risk, and Director Wray acknowledged that that's a risk. I thought that was helpful, particularly as we go back to hold Americans accountable on that. And I think the point that Mr. Pfluger made about the people on the known terrorist watch list loose and free inside this country, and Mr. Mayorkas' policy of just letting them go, that's going to be a startling fact to the American people.
I saw a statistic yesterday that it's going to cost, and it came from came from your committee, $451 billion. Is that correct for the migrant crisis?
That's correct. Well, that's the top estimate, but the lowest estimate was around 200 and something billion. So let's assume for a second it's somewhere in the middle. It's just $300 billion every year. That's a cost to this open border for the American taxpayers. That is unacceptable. It's unconscionable. It's not, the Congress didn't vote to spend that money. We're supposed to be the ones that determine how, the spending of the government, right? It's just the stupid, ridiculous policies of this secretary that wind up costing the taxpayers because of the stupidity. And it just, that's a huge cost. The human costs are, of course, even greater, and that was our previous phase 3 of this investigation with human costs, where we talked about the hundreds of thousands of deaths to fentanyl, et cetera.
What would the border wall have cost? Because they kept saying it was too expensive and we can't afford it. You're telling me that we're somewhere between $2 and $4.5, $billion for the migrant crisis. What would the total cost of the border wall been?
The border wall, you get 900 miles of border wall with about $5 billion. So there are certainly aspects of the border where a wall wouldn't necessarily be the best thing, just because the geography wouldn't allow it to be constructed. It'd be very difficult, where we would then in those cases use drones and other things. The whole point of a wall is that you canalize flow so that people come through and then you can be there when they come through. So, but 900 miles will buy you, $5 billion will buy you about 900 miles. You've got a border that, that would cover almost half the border.
So you're saying that in the long run, a border wall would be a hell of a lot cheaper than $300 billion a year. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm saying. And honestly, to my own colleagues who voted against the CR when we put HR 2 on the CR, I think there were a few Republicans who voted against that. And I understand, I've not ever voted for a clean CR in my lifetime. I voted for that because the extra $10 or $15 billion we would have spent in that 30 days with completely getting border security would be a return on investment. Let's say we save the $300 billion a year for the cost of $30 billion. I mean, there's no businessman in the world that wouldn't make that investment to get that return. And so, I was, to be completely honest, a little frustrated with some of our Republicans who didn't vote for that.
What is going to be the plan going forward? We get the statements of the FBI director. The Homeland Security Committee is pretty much clear that the open border is a threat. Is there a plan if Republicans take back the Senate and the White House to return these people to their countries? I mean, it seems like what the Democrats are trying to do is just run out the clock. So we say, they've been here so long, we can't send them home now.
I think, and I'll have to go pretty soon. I've got to get back into committee, but I will say this. It really depends on who wins. I've heard President Trump say that deportation would be something he would support, and I certainly would support that, because the problem is you have to create a disincentive for this mass migration. We're going to drain the workforce from Guatemala and countries like that if we don't get smart on this, plus the impacts that it has here. So we have to create a disincentive. So let's assume for a second that a Republican wins, that Trump wins, shuts the border. If he only just shuts the border, all the people in Latin America who want to come here, all they'll do is just wait until the next Democrat president comes in. To create a disincentive during that Democrat president, you just have to deport those that came in during the last Democrat president. And then hopefully the individual will say, well, you know what, a Republican's going to win next time and I'll just be kicked out and be brought back home. So that's why I'm supporting deportation, because it is the only way to create a potential disincentive when a Democrat winds up in the White House.